Hello! So I've been wanting to do a corset video for ages, and the latest request video that I've had from somebody whose handle is @golden88ah. Hi, thank you for your request on when women stopped wearing corsets, comfortable, relaxed clothing like the girdle. Now, the concept of undergarments creating a small waist was mentioned in ancient Greek writings, and the phenomenon goes back further than you think. The word corset comes from the old French word for corpse, for body, and the Latin word corpus. The actual earliest representation comes from the Minoan statue of the snake goddess from around 1600 BCE. And the ancient Circassian tribe and the Abkhaz tribe of the Caucasus regions used corsets to control women for modesty. They were tight-laced from childhood until their wedding night, consummated because the groom had to slowly and very gently unlace around 50-odd laces in the corset to master self-control. Around 1155 to 1200, there was a fashion of corseting the outside of the middle waist, and it was called a demi-corsage. Now, in the Middle Ages, during the Gothic period, which was during the 12 and 1300s, a bit like the same era as the demi-corsage, the underneath women were using bandages to control their waist. The end of the 1400s, front-laced bodices were starting to be worn and were stiffened with whalebone and tight-laced. The cotte, which was a tight-fitting garment and side-laced, which meant on the rib, was first worn in France. In Spain, corsets were supported by a long vertical wooden piece and a rod known as the busque. 1500s, Catherine de Medici, wife of Henry II of France, popularised the corset. She banned thick-waisted women. It was out. This led to clothing items helping all women achieve this. So the corset is evolving. In the Tudor period, corsets were called bodies. You can probably see why. Worn by both men and women, creating a tubular, triangular look for frontage shape. In the 1600s, corsets were made to accentuate the breasts and lessen the waist, and it was barrel-shaped. These were called stays. Now, later on, King Charles I's wife, Queen Henrietta Maria, had her corsets highly decorated and often with bare breasts. Your breast was considered aristocratic with status symbol, not allowed by the peasants. The 1700 stays were more restricting, with more boning in them, closely stitched together and vertically together, of whalebone, cane or hemp material. Look at this beauty. The flaps at the bottom that helped it sit nicely on the waist were called taps. Now, the early 1800s saw the Regency period, with the fashion being the Empire line, which went just under the breasts. So corsets became almost bra-like to accommodate that. The mid to late 1800s began the Victorian period, and the corsets reached the height of their popularity, evolving into the incredibly pinched-in waists. And in 1900 to 1910, at the beginning of the Edwardian period, these S-bend-shaped corsets were being sold as a health corset. Actually ended up contorting and disabling a lot of women. Some of these corsets boasted up to 100 pieces of boning of whalebone or ivory. Now, later in the 1900s, in the Edwardian period, It was phasing out the corset in World War I. There had been the feminist movement and the women's suffrage when the corset was now being seen as a sign of oppression. In the war, women were now needed to work or to serve, and in no way could corsets be popular anymore. Who could work and serve in a boned corset? The metal in corsets were needed for the war production, which gathered 28,000 tons of metal, enough to build 2 battleships. So going into the 1920s, we see more relaxed type of undergarments and clothing. The girdle still had some concept of a supported figure, but now for the emancipated woman, the flat, no-busted, masculine-looking figure all came into fashion. But between the 30s and the 60s, the panty girdle gave us some support. This thing sort of went out of fashion when tights were invented and we didn't need the stocking suspenders. So thank you to @golden88ah for your fantastic request video on corsets, which I have been able to tie up with my own idea of doing a corset video. I do hope you've all enjoyed another historical fashion story. If you have, do join me again next time. Until then, bye!